Hello, everyone, and welcome to this slightly later than advertised live stream with us geeks. I'm your host today, James Denny, Global COO here at Sales Geek. And I do apologize. Some of you might have noticed that it did start and then stopped almost instantly, bang on 12 o'clock. And I won't lie, user error. I really want to say, well, the system fell over and something happened there. I pressed too many buttons and I ended it at the same time as I started it. And that's just me. I do apologize. So I'm going to get into what we're talking about at the moment. I have a couple of guests on with me, so I'm going to just let them talk about themselves for a few moments, and then we'll get into the meat and bones of what we're on about today. And I will try my best to not press more buttons. So can I just get Lisa, as is the professional way, to do a little introduction to herself. Tell us, Lisa, who are you? A little bit about yourself. You've only got half an hour, chicken, so if we can keep that on a little bit short, that'd be amazing. And then we'll do the same with Campbell, and then we'll crack on.
Hi, Lisa Ansell. I am the co-director of Sales Geek in Essex. I've been with Sales Geek for 4 years. And one of my absolute fields of fascination is psychology, decision-making, human behavior. I completely geek out about this. So it's around psychological safety and social physics and all of that stuff. So I'm really excited about today. I think that's all you need to know. You'll find out the rest later.
There you go, Lisa. And Campbell, welcome.
Thank you, James. Yes, my name is Campbell. I'm part of the team here at Sales Geek Midlands, based in Leicestershire. And yeah, I think it's a fascinating subject, and knowing thyself and knowing others, and how to connect and communicate is something that I think from early years has been something that has always piqued an interest. So it's a pet subject. Hopefully I'm going to learn something today from yourself, James, and also from Lisa, but also able to share, which is cool.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, you're welcome to ask questions. I will put it up on the banner, which doesn't require me to press a button to put the banner up. So if you suddenly lose me and everything, you know I pressed the wrong thing again, but I'll try and get that right as we're getting into it. So the purpose of today's little chat, this is recorded as well, so it will go back out. You can watch it on replay if you want to. So we're going to talk today about the psychology of decision-making. Now, that is a study of cognitive, emotional, and social processes that lead us to a choice between alternatives. And the thing we have to remember is that a decision is a choice. We're either going here, or we're going there, or we're going multiple different ways. But something that a lot of people forget about when it comes to decision making is it is a choice that we are making between things. And there's lots of things that go on that inform that. So it involves how individuals perceive, process, respond to information. It's influenced by internal and external factors. There's emotional and there's biases around that. There's cultural implications. There's external influences. There's social context. There's underlying psychological factors that help explain why decisions are made, why they're right, sometimes why they're wrong, how we are influenced, not influenced, and how we are informed to make better or worse decisions. So there's a lot behind that to chew around over the next half an hour, 45 minutes. So hopefully we'll just dive into that. And I suppose I'm going to open up to a question to both of my good colleagues there and say, what do you see out in the market right now when you're talking to people about a topic that's probably high on a lot of salespeople's minds, and that's decision stagnation, where people are frozen to make a decision, can't make decisions, or struggling to make a decision. So let's start there. Let's start the framework about how people struggle to make a decision, and then we can get under the psychology of how decisions are made. There we go. I think I've set it up, and now I'll try and put the banner on. And if I do lose everyone in the next 30 seconds, yeah. Right.
I think it's a really interesting one. Decision fatigue is, there's good studies around that, and we can look at the likes of Steve Jobs. From a getting up and starting his day, he always knew what he was going to wear, and he always wore the same thing. Therefore, that was one decision that he didn't have to make. I live with another geek, and she spends a lot of time choosing the right outfit, and it's really important. But by the end of that session, she can be already fatigued out as far as getting the right outfits concerned. That's a really simple example, and I think one of the challenges, especially with today, is that there's a bombardment of your business activities, and then all the things that you need to be able to complement to either grow your business or figure out some stuff within your business. And it's that kind of being in the business or on the business. And there is, I think today, there is so much availability to data, information and insight that actually to be able to discern that is where some of that fatigue comes from. And being able to make the right decisions at the right time. And the inaction is an action in itself, and that then creates its own set of problems, because actually it's better to do and then fix than not do and then just be sitting with missed opportunities. So I think
absolutely
a lot of fatigue and all that input that gets pushed out there.
I think a lot of it comes from trust, right? So I think as a business owner, as a leader, as a decision maker, we carry a lot of responsibility, and I'm not sure whether we always trust ourselves. And I think from my point of view, when it comes to and we all do it, we all have moments when we're like, what the hell am I going to do with this, right? Sometimes you sit there and you go, I don't even know how to start dealing with this, right? And first of all, you need to trust yourself. You need to then talk yourself down, right? It's like, this, you've got this, you've faced this before, you've got through all of your worst days, you're still here, you're still going, and you need to trust yourself. So first of all is to kind of calm that limbic system, calm the panic, all of those kinds of things, because you can get so lost in that. So I think trusting yourself. And I think the other thing is having the trust of others. So that psychological safety, like James was able to make an absolute hash of this morning, but he was psychologically safe enough to kind of go, no, it was me, I got it wrong. And I think we have a lack of self-trust, and I think we have a lack of psychological safety in our teams, in our leadership, in our on our board, all of those kinds of things. And I don't think they get addressed because it becomes too human rather than being business. I think there can be a real disconnect, but actually all businesses are just humans working together effectively. And when we stop to do that, we fail to work effectively and efficiently in ourselves and as a team. That's when it all kind of, you get that freeze, you get that fright, you get that, you get that complete stillness, right? Because you go, I don't know what to do, or I'm too frightened to make that decision. Like Campbell said, you've just got to make it. It doesn't matter whether you get it wrong, you just need to do something. It's easier to apologize than to ask permission, right? Sometimes. And I think trusting yourself and having the trust of the people around us is incredibly important, essential, that we feel that, we know that, and we can move forward on that. I think that frees up a lot of that fatigue or that fear. It's basically fear and fright, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into that. And I think to understand some of that, you have to dig a little bit underneath how our brains work and all that sort of cool stuff about human biology, about where decisions come from, how they're made, etc. And there's 3 parts of our brain that do that. I'm not going to go into the brain sciencey stuff today, but in essence, decision making involves several areas of the brain, but the prefrontal cortex is the largest part of the responsibility of that brain. It controls the hub for complex processes. It's responsible for reasoning and logic, which we rely on a lot today, for reasoning and logic, judgment, planning, and planning future outcomes. And future outcomes is a really important part of that decision-making process. Other crucial structures include hippocampus for recalling past experiences, imagining future scenarios. So whilst the prefrontal cortex can logicize what a future outcome will be, it's the hippocampus side of our brain that imagines what it might be. So we have what it needs to be versus what it might be, and what we want it to be, that desired outcome, all help us to make those decisions. And then we have another part of our brain called I always pronounce this wrong, amygdala. Yeah, we'll go with that. Amygdala, one of those. And that's the piece that controls emotion, reward, and recognition. And some decisions are purely based on reward and recognition. What we know from the filter of decision making, with all those brain parts and chemicals and all the other bits and pieces that goes on, is that actually it's emotion that tips us over the edge. We'll always use prefrontal cortex and everything else to build that stuff out, but emotion tips us over to the edge. And back to your point, Lisa, if you don't have emotional trust, and trust informs emotion more than anything else, then it makes it hard for us to tip the balance over into making a decision, which is why we at Sales Geek always say that as a salesperson, you are required to bring two things to the table 100% of the time. Everything else is a game, go play it. And those two things are integrity and honesty. Integrity and honesty create trust. Everything else is a process. Play the process system, and you should build fans. And obviously, we make decisions based on fandom. And I read a really good document. I forget who his name was now. Some Harvard dude a couple of years ago wrote something about this obsession with fans and liking. And he was correlating it between fans in sport, where we like a sport and we're a fan of a professional sports personality or something like that, and then liking in fans as akin to social media and the emotional status that gives us, etc. But we see, and we see then influencers come out the back of that, right? So if you get a sports influencer and a social media influencer, someone you quite like and have followed maybe on Instagram or TikTok, I'm a bit old for that one, but maybe, if you like them and you feel that you have trust with them because they have honesty and integrity, you're more likely to make positive decisions based on their influence. But they're emotionally biased and based decisions rather than logically sound decisions, which also, there was a word of warning in the document that said this is part of our challenge in society and a problem maybe in some sectors of society as to why we believe some things that maybe are maybe not true or maybe not substantiated, or things that have been in the press in different ways, whatever. So we can get influenced in different ways. And we tend, as a society, we're making more decisions today based purely on an emotional side rather than logically fact checking and making sure that this all stacks up. And I find that quite an interesting thing that's now filtering into the world of business and sales. For you two out in the field, are you seeing any of that? Are you feeling that? Is that something you see around your businesses?
I think maybe it's the demographic of the people that I mostly work with. I thought it was a really interesting point, this fandom point, because is that not just human connection of the modern age? Because we are fundamentally hardwired for human connection. And when sometimes that is sort of once removed, it becomes, I'm not sure that it's very authentic. And I think the other point that you made was that of influence. How do we influence the people around us, and how do we influence the people who we want to buy from us, and how, both internally and externally. So I think that's a really interesting thing. I think people have almost like misunderstood. We're all so craving human connection, especially after we were shut down and all of the rest of the stuff. And we managed to do that in an online way because we needed to be connected. And I think it's probably taken us off path. But I think those who are maybe more grounded or have got more experience or more trust in themselves and their kind of emotional maturity, or trusting themselves before that all happened, I think that's less likely to affect them. Whereas I think younger entrepreneurs and younger people coming into business, and how do we sell? We sell an awful lot online and we do all of that, I think are more kind of swayed or influenced. And I think influence is a really interesting thing, because if you are absolutely clear on who you are and what you stand for and what you're doing and what your purpose is and what your values are, that it's much more difficult to be influenced or moved. And I think for the most part, the people that we work with tend to be more mature. I'm not saying that, I mean, I don't think we work with enough kind of really young entrepreneurs. I do work with a few, but I think maybe people are more robust. Well, I mean, certainly when you get to my age, you'd want to think that you know who you are and what your values are and what your purpose are and what you're here to do. But and I think we're less influenced in this kind of, in these weird worlds. I don't know. What do you think?
Go on, Campbell. You have a go.
Okay. Well, I'll anchor into influence and influencers. So, and I'd say probably last 12 months, last 6 months, when I've been recruiting and building up particular teams. Now there's a guy who does some stuff on TikTok. He does on Instagram, but he specializes in interview techniques, and he's very aggressive. His content is quite loud, and he shouts quite a bit. And he leans right into the camera, and it goes to that disingenuous parts of what you were talking about, Lisa, which is the foundation of integrity and honesty. And I've had a couple of candidates that have come and interviewed, and as they're sitting there, I just hear this guy and I hear his content, and what they haven't discerned is the fact that he shouts isn't necessarily because that's what you should do in an interview. It's because he's dealing with tiny phone people and he's trying to get your eyeballs. And he's using that as his hook, but they've taken that content. They've now got a bias that is conscious or unconscious, and they're now using that to then try and project themselves and answer the questions. They might have some tangible stuff in their answer, but the way that they're delivering it has been influenced, and that influence has then created a disconnect, because all I feel as the interviewer is, it's just disingenuous. It doesn't relate to who they are and what they're doing. They're just trying to mimic. And I think that kind of, it leans into about that noise. It leans into unconscious bias. And I know that if we go back, coming out of lockdown, and Google did some really interesting studies on this, how to engage with male and females from a post-lockdown perspective. It was much easier to shake a guy's hand than it was to shake a lady's hand. Again, unconscious bias, the whole lot of what's that new etiquette like, and looking at that all, it comes to that behavior, and that behavior through either, as I say, an unconscious or a conscious action, to turn around and go, you've just missed the opportunity to make an impression with a key decision maker because you didn't shake their hand. And actually understanding that, and then understanding how to read the room and read the people, is it's an ever shifting landscape. And I think, to go back to the guy on TikTok, the problem is there's so much content coming out that it then creates this bias that people want the golden nugget, but they don't understand how the nugget's constructed. Therefore, it then forms something that's disingenuous, which creates that subconscious or conscious question mark. And that's enough to then go, yeah, I don't know what it is, but you're not my people, or this is not my guy.
That's interesting. Let me ask you both a quick question then. I think I might have picked out the answer from what I think you might say, but I'll ask. Do you think that we're talking about B2B, right? Let's just deal with that. Let's not deal with consumer, although consumer buyer behavior heavily influences your business buyer behavior, right? So those two are conjoined aspects of how you make a decision. So how you operate and procure and buy services for yourself as a consumer, how you buy online, how you shop, really does influence what you do as a business buyer as well. But we're not getting into that bit today. Slightly different subject. But do you think that business, B2B buying habits, decision-making habits have changed pre-lockdown to today? So there was the lockdown, then post-lockdown, and we're kind of 5 years out the other side. Are we 5 years? Yeah, we are. We're 5 years out the other side now. Blimey, already. Soon be Christmas. So has it changed? And if so, do you two feel, between you've observed what bits have changed?
I think our route to information has changed. I think our use of social platforms has
Yeah.
changed because
Yeah.
because that was all we had, right? And so there's been a huge shift in habit, in behavior, in all of those kinds of things. And I do think, you know, like, I mean, if you look at LinkedIn, so most of our stuff, pretty much everybody that buys from us either goes directly or indirectly from LinkedIn. It's a business platform.
Yeah.
That's one we sit in very happily. It's where I make a lot of noise, where you make a lot of noise, where we all make a lot of noise.
Where this will be later.
Yeah, noise. And so I think the thing that I've noticed is that if you use it really, really well, people feel they know you. So it's like this, certainly when I go out to people and they go, oh, we love your videos, you know, they feel like they know who you are. They feel like they know what you stand for. And I think when you're making business decisions, especially ones like our buyers do, it's like, I'm putting my business in, you know, it's not going the way I want it to, or there's a big problem, you know, I need somebody to come along and run with this, and I need to trust them, and I need to feel like I know who they are and what they stand for and whether that aligns with who we are. So I think if you use LinkedIn correctly, and that's really multimedia, a lot of video content that people can get to know you. It's like meeting a friend, you know, on a regular basis. It's all of those lovely touch points, isn't it? So I think it has changed. I think fundamentally, and if you look back way before, the people who were on your network were people that you've met, that you've done business with, that you'd worked with, and all of that sort of stuff. And now it's much more of a social media platform. So that in itself has changed. And because that in itself has changed and our reach has changed and where we use that, then of course the outcomes are going to change. Of course the behavior is going to change.
Mm. Okay.
It's really, it's a fascinating, it's a fascinating landscape. I was working with a client, say 6 months ago, and they're got a big sales force, and their sales force, it was recognized that they had become gun shy when it was something pre-pandemic, making appointments, calling customers, and you know, phoning them, picking up the phone and speaking to people. And I think the shift in how we communicate with each other, be it WhatsApp, be it email, be it LinkedIn direct message, all that stuff, there's the adage of, you know, you got to get your touch points and you got to do all that stuff. But yet today, one of the most successful and assertive ways is to pick up the phone and speak to people. And it's kind of like, that's what we used to do before all of this, and all of a sudden it's actually, you know, and it's kind of old sales manager humor, you know, if you want a sales rep to shut up, put a call list in one hand and a phone in the other. But that is a very effective way of a campaign to do outreach. But you've established sales forces that have become so gun shy, and they hide behind you know, the fact that they've got activity, but that activity to the, you know, to the number that you need to message, actually, if you call somebody and you get them, you get an answer there and then, and you get to be able to talk to them there and then. Now the skill is to be able to use that situation to your advantage and to have the right ability to develop that. But actually, it's so much more effective to be able to speak to people as part of something that comes in. And I think to look at that, especially from that B2B perspective, you know, there is we can use these agents and we can do this and we can do that. Actually, the best way to do it is to have relationships with people. James, 5 weeks ago, you I think you put a post up on, it wasn't about B2B and it wasn't about B2C, it was H to H. And I think that for me is, you know, sales, where are we now? 4.0, 5.0? I think we're kind of, you know, from up where we are today, especially up against the fact that, you know, AI is going to replace us all. Well, yeah, it's going to replace parts of us, but actually the bit that, even if you're looking at a massive tender and you're looking at going for a big chunk of business, unless you've got relationships within that company, well, what's the point of playing? Because you're just either, you know, another Me Too, or you have no idea what the motivators are for that company, and what's the cultural connection with that organization or that buyer. And actually looking at understanding, you know, you've got an economical buyer and their biggest motivator is maybe they're saving for a wedding, maybe they've got kids that have got to put for university, maybe that this deal is dependent on something that's completely external that you don't see unless you've spent time getting to know them. And I know that as I was moving teams out of the 5 years ago, there was a big reluctance to go face to face, and it was like, look, it's much more efficient. I get much more college, and it's like the virtual version of me and a BD versus the in the room version of me and the BD. I'll win every time if I'm in the room, because you just have so much better equity when you've got that connection. And I think you got to be smart, and you don't want to waste your time, but also the counter of that is, I think today, especially across the general sales culture, is we are missing so much good opportunities because we just don't pick up the phone. And it's super simple, but that's, it works.
Yeah, I think you're right there. So that the big thing there, the human to human, right? So B2B, B2C, well, you're humans, and you have to engage with humanity. We see so much out there, don't we? That salespeople and everyone, they hide behind
keyboard warriors,
keyboard or the phone, right? Still tapping. And something we do a lot of at Sales Geek, we send personal videos, don't we? We do a lot of it. Don't do as much as maybe we could or should, but we said I certainly do more of it now. I try to stop typing notes and send personal videos because it brings the emotional context that you can't generate in that typing. So a top tip straight away from today's discussion is be more personal, be more human to human, whether that's engaging on video, less text, less keyboards. That was a keyboard, by the way. Less keyboards, all that sort of stuff. Pick up the phone, make the call. It's so easy to not make the call. That doesn't mean that somebody makes the decision, but it does help build trust because they can hear the voice, they can hear the intent in the voice and stuff like that. And trust, as Lisa and Campbell have been saying, is everything. They've got to trust you. That all said, though, there are some clear influencing factors. And what I want to do is stick on the riff of influencing, because decision making has a process. There is a cognitive process that our human brains go through. I talked a little bit about the brainy parts that make decisions, and there's lots of things that go into it. But there is also a process that our brains go through to make a decision. And we've done this since humans first could do this, many hundreds of thousands, stroke millions of years ago, depending on which strand of evolution you want to go with. Anyway, we're not getting into that stuff. But it comes down to that emotional side of things, right? Fright and flight still hold us really to the core. We're afraid sometimes to make decisions if they have a risk impact to ourselves, or a negative risk impact to ourselves, or a negative risk impact to others that we might know. It's called the risk triangle of decision making. But there are some influencing factors that we can think about, and there are two underlying areas that underpin the influencing factors that help us, you who are listening to this, maybe help people to make better decisions. And by the way, better decisions might be, the answer is no, or not yet. Stop time wasting, right? Sometimes we're trying to get people, we're trying too hard to sell something. We want them to say yes. Sometimes no is good. Right, move on, go to the next thing. It might not be a no and never, it just might be a no, just not yet. And that might be also okay. So getting to the right decisions in the most expedient amount of time is the right thing to do. You must always be aware that the influencing factors around us as humans, as decision makers, changes and fluctuates on a conscious basis, continuous basis. I'll get my words right. What might be a decision right here, right now, as I live and breathe at this particular moment in time, might be a decision that changes in 2 or 3 hours' time because of something else that moved and alternated around that particular period. So things change all the time. You never know what those things are. But let me just capture, I have to do this from memory, so live with me, folks, on this one. So I've got to go draw into my psychology textbooks pretty hard on this one, so go with me on this one. So influencing factors, there's a few things in here. Number one you have to take into consideration is the decision type you're asking someone to make. And there are broadly, and I'm being very broad with this, all right? There are more than this, but I'm being broad to keep it simple. There are 4 key decision types. There's routine versus strategic. There is minor versus major. There is individual versus group. And there is urgent versus non-urgent, right? They're your 4 core decision types. And often they are routine, but urgent, strategic, not urgent, those sorts of things. They all combine together, but they're your 4 types. So when you're thinking about someone's you want them to make a decision, which one or combination of the 4 groups does it fall into? So that's the first decision type you've got to consider. Next influencing factor you've got is the environment. And now in the environment, there's lots going on in here. All right, so things like, that'll be things like culture, that'll be values of the organization, values of the individual, right? One is often different to the other, not always combined in the same. There is the risk triangle, risk to myself, risk to others I know, and risk to others I don't know. Make sure you understand that. And then there is certainty versus uncertainty. So that's environment that impacts what happens with the first 4. Right, okay, dig a deep, James here. Right, okay, and then you go into ethics, right? So the ethics of decision making then start to form their part. So is it legal? Is it fair? Are 2 really important parts. So legal is often a very quick, I can rationalize that. It's not legal, so let's not do it. But there are some people that are not legal. Let's find a way around it. That's more arbitrary to find your way through, or from an influencing perspective. But the fair one is actually more interesting, because what is fair to me might not be fair to somebody else. So you have to balance the fair seesaw. Topic for another day, but there is a quandary, a quantum position known within decision making, which is the fair seesaw. So understanding that's really important. Then we've got, does it feel right? So legal, fair, does it feel right to me? Does it feel right to the organization? And that's very important, right? That's very personal to us. So decision types, environment, ethics, then you've got emotions. And this is the big one, right? So emotions are very, very specific, and they have specific influences, specific outcomes, specific nuances to them based on individuals, based on scenarios, based on the time of day. It's really sunny here in Blackburn today, which is super rare for us. So yay, let's make really good decisions and positive decisions. I'm all in, let's go do this stuff. But things can happen in a different way if I've had a bad day at home or whatever, etc. So emotions impact us a lot. Also about how do we minimize negative emotions, and you can't always spot that or influence it or know what's going on in someone's life. But the big one about emotions is regret. All right, so this is the one we often forget as sellers about working with people that we're trying to sell some products and services to, is there's always a quandary within our human biases that deals with regret. We have made many decisions as humans over the years in a business environment, and we're sticking with business environment for this particular part. But this is why it's important to know that your consumer buyer behavior is dragged through to your business buying behavior. And regret is a big thing you'll drag with you. We've all gone and bought something from back in the day, eBay. Is eBay still a thing nowadays? I have no idea. Yeah. It is? Okay. So back in the day when I've gone and got something from eBay, and got very excited about it. I wanted this thing and it's turned up, and then I've regretted buying it. And I've regretted it often, but because I've miscalculated the risk triangle. I did not emphasize or calculate the risk to me of buying my £250 Luke Skywalker replica lightsaber that I thought was a bargain of a century. And my wife went, yeah, no, that's going. So I didn't quite work that out, and I regretted it. There's a part of me that said, oh, this is amazing, man, I love this. And then there's a part of me by the name of my wife that went, yeah, no, that was the worst decision you ever made. But we drag regret, right? So in business, we drag regret as well. And you have to factor in how people think and feel about regret. If I did the wrong thing, and to do that, you have to understand how do they measure success at a point in time in the future. So when we all humans make decisions, especially in business, come back to business, at some point in the future, and constantly over time in the future, we will reevaluate that decision to understand within ourselves, did we do the right thing or did we do the bad thing? And sometimes it might be right, sometimes it might be bad. For example, I'll give you a really good example. We have a piece of software here at Sales Geek that we've had 2 years, and we have a love-hate relationship with it. At some point, we thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it was the best decision we ever made. And we're coming up to a contract renewal on this particular piece of software, and I can't wait to get rid of it. So at some point, it was a really good decision. And a post-evaluation said, I do not regret this. But now we're coming to a contract end, and now I regret it. Now, the rational part of me, in hindsight, must answer a very critical question. If you could jump back, given everything you know today and the time you had today, would you do it again? I would still say yes. That's the objective nature of decision making, because of the benefit it gave us over time. It's a pain in the ass for different reasons. But the emotional side to me would say, no, I'll go to a different supplier, a different provider. And that's very dangerous. So people that have their emotional context, that live more to their emotional sides rather than the more balanced judgment side, will carry regret as a decision-making criteria. That's always a bit problematic for us. So go back again quickly, two more to cover. Decision types, environmental, ethics, emotions, individual differences, right? So all the things, values, experience, personal, intuitive thinking styles. Then we've got our attitude to risk, back to that triangle. We have our DISC profiles. We do a lot here at Geek, knowing the psychometric profile, the behaviors, how do I deal with problems and challenges, influence of people, pace and change, and how I respond to rules and procedures as set by others around us. Hugely important when it comes to making decisions. And then finally, the last bit, I think I got through this without getting too scathed here, is barriers. So what are the barriers to a decision, right? So it comes under biases. That will be a barrier. There'll be politics. They are barriers. Can be positive, can lock them down really quick. They could be really huge barriers. Framing amount of information, interests, emotions, all those sorts of things. And barriers could be pricing and stuff like that, but that's not the core aspect of those sorts of things. So in a really long-winded way, I'm ever so sorry to have done that to you. There are 6 core factors that create the influence around making a decision. You've got to be clear, your first 4 types that you're making, the combination thereof. You've got to know your environment and how you're going to slot within that environment. The ethics you have to understand. Is it right? Does it feel right? The feel right is the more important out of all of those. The emotions, how they handle regret, how they handle the risk factor, and what barriers are in play. I'm knackered. Anyone else want to have a go?
I think it's really fascinating. I do think it comes down to trust and psychological safety, right? Because that buyer's remorse, we get it. We've had somebody talk ourselves, it felt right at the time. We've decided to make a decision. That old brown shoe, foot in the door salesperson that makes you make that decision at the time and makes and sits in your front room until you sign up to the double glazing or the kitchen or the mobile home or whatever it is that you do. And there is that buyer's remorse. But I think when you truly trust yourself and I think regret, see, I don't really do regret and I don't really do guilt. And the reason why I don't do that is not because I'm a psychopath. It's because I'll stop it.
Oh, I don't know. There's a tendency in there somewhere.
There's a lot of good in psychopathy. I think it's much maligned, but we won't go down that route because
the fact that you're rooting for it gives me challenges straight away.
But I think it's a case of the reason I don't do regret and I don't do guilt is because you have to trust yourself, and if you trust yourself to make the best decision, I mean, we've all made horrendous decisions, right? But we're making the decision on our values, and I don't make fast decisions, but I make good decisions with the information I have at the time, and I trust myself and my self-knowledge that I know that I've made a decision. Now times change, experience changed, and we move on and we learn about, just like with your software, we learn that, well, maybe I didn't understand the brief in the first place, or maybe I didn't understand how we were going to use that, or maybe I didn't understand how my business has changed. It doesn't necessarily mean you've made a bad decision. It means that you didn't have all of the information at the time, or you didn't, I'm very, very thorough about my decisions, like extremely thorough about my decisions. So it means that actually there isn't much space for regret. There isn't much space for guilt, but there is a lot of space for learning. And I think that's the psychological safety. I'm psychologically safe in myself. And I think organizations need to be more psychologically safe for people to make the mistakes or those wrong decisions, because ultimately you're putting responsibility in their hands. So give them that, give them the trust, give them the responsibility, give them the support, make sure that you support them as, servant leaders or whatever else it is you need to be. But I guess that's where I kind of sit.
Cool. I wanted to ask a billion questions there. Be a bit challenging on one or two of those, but anyway, I know I'll leave it there. Campbell, did you want to say anything to that one?
Yeah, I think
I've got a couple more on that.
Yeah, I think for me, and in preparation for today, I was thinking emotionally about things that I have a strange connection to, and insurance, I think, is a really good example to take everything that you set up, James, and then start looking at the process of why do we have insurance, and what does insurance give us, and also how some people will buy one policy and other people will buy another. Looking at regret, I regret using the household insurance that we've had, because when I came to use it, it let me down greatly. But I thought I had something that was giving me security and comfort, and I was more than happy to pay my dividends. But when it came down to the engagement, it was all the gear but no idea as far as that goes. But you look at, from a business perspective, and you look at, say, stock management and warehousing, and I know the businesses that I've been involved in where I've been sitting as a director, understanding a good partner for insurance and paying those fees to the right company allows me to trade ethically, allows me to know that if my warehouse was to burn down, if you've over or under egged what you've got in there, the vexing that will happen, because they'll start removing 50% and 75% and 90% of what they pay you back because you thought you could be clever. And I think emotionally, when we then look at the I factor of the company we're working with, the decision maker that we're engaging with, understanding that emotional journey, understanding what's important for them, and then you look at the fact that the majority of us are more than happy to pay insurance, month in, month out for either personally or for our business, because it gives you the ability to have confidence in if it goes wrong, you're covered. And I was with a business owner last week, and his restaurant had burnt down, and he was like, I was gutted for about 2 weeks, and then I got £500,000. I'm not gutted anymore. If it wasn't insured, or if his insurance wasn't a good product, then you just think about that from an owner's perspective and from an emotional perspective, and he genuinely was really disappointed, but actually he was like, no, I've got cover and I've got that security, and you think about that from that survival perspective, that feeling perspective, and then some of the frameworks and the understanding of the bits that go into decision making, and the bits that go into either remorse, or actually this was the right thing to do and it was right to do it, all layers into that, and effectively it's the feel, it's what's that giving you, and is it giving you a feeling where you're happy to endorse and recommend, or you're looking at it and going, yeah, when we took it out, and I think there's a lot, especially with AI, there's a lot of people promising the world, and then when you've paid your dues and you get in and start using it, and you start looking for some of the aspects that they've been selling, you kind of go, yeah, it's all smoke and mirrors. There's nothing there.
Just on that one, Campbell, does that come down to, like, because that insurance one resonates with me at the moment, because I've just had my house is insured with a company, and they sent me an auto renewal email come through the other few weeks ago now, this is, and it jumped up materially, like £600 a year was material change, and I'm like, geez, not having that. And I went back to compare the market sort of thing, and when I put my house and all of its changes and details in, and by the way, this is not my company that I have know this, so I just took the policy and copied it across and put it into compare the market sort of thing. I've been quoted 2,700 now. It was 2,100 last year. It's 2,700 this year. And I'm like, geez, this is a jump. And they couldn't explain why. They just said market's changed. So I went back to compare the market, and the cheapest I could find was $4,500. Cheapest. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So clearly I've stayed where I am. But is that a cost benefit analysis versus like the risk of doing something? Because I have no idea what will happen with that insurance should anything bad happen to my house, and I've fortunately, touch wood, never had to do any claims or anything like that, but where does the decision lie for me to stay there? Is that just a cost benefit analysis versus your guy, right? Going like, oh, it's a bad decision. Now it's a good one. Actually, I've got paid out. It's good. What's influenced that?
It's really, well, Mel talks about this. So one of the trainers in Sales Geek, and she comes from farming stock, and you're going to have to help me here because I always get the name of the company wrong. But it's big, what are they called? They've got corn as their logo, and they're a premium insurer. Yeah, our Mel, but she
I have no idea. Something to do with chickens.
She always uses that company, and she knows she pays over the odds, and she knows she does it because it's the same person that she speaks to that her dad spoke to, and she's got a personal connection with that company, and therefore she's more than happy to just take their lead and go with them. And I think it's a real, from a strategy perspective, from a customer engagement perspective, it's the cost of a new customer versus the cost of keeping an existing customer, the cost of the perception feeling, and then understanding, from a negotiation perspective or for a customer engagement perspective, I am no longer a virgin digital customer, and the reason being is I came in on a deal. And that deal stopped, and all of a sudden I was paying £14 a month, and they put it up to £50 a month, and it's like, I'm not staying for that. And they have a high churn part of their model. Do I want to go back to them? Do I want to stay with the new incumbent that I feel I've got a better relationship with? And it all boils down to when your insurance companies do that automatic renewal, the premium tends to go up, and that they've got you, and they're just going to keep nudging and nudging and nudging. But actually, they've lost an equity opportunity where they could have framed that in a way to put their prices up, but then give you security and also be able to benchmark you against the rest of the market and go, by all means, you're free to go and have a look around. And then all of a sudden you find these guys are still £2,000 cheaper than what this new price is. Therefore, I'm going to put. But look at that emotional roller coaster. And in one way, they've brought you in and hold you closer now. But what if it was the counter to that, and you discovered you could find it for £1,500? All the work that company's done, and I don't mean the company, I mean the marketing, the messaging, the story, everything that they value for the acquisition of a new customer is all for nothing because you've lost it in a moment. And that one moment, regardless of whatever happens in the future, there will be that part of you that looks at them and goes, I don't like you because I don't trust you, because you have played with that one element that is, sacrosanct. You cannot, you've got bad news, break the bad news. If it's true and integral, then you ethically will always have an opportunity to win that customer back. But if you have in any way played with that, you will, the damage is long suffering. That's why Mel will always go back, because she's got such a strong relationship with it's going to annoy me now.
I'll find it and I won't post about it later. Sorry everyone, sorry Mel.
I do feel that regret or remorse reduces with the amount of personal influence that we feel with that business relationship, right? So if we feel that we can go back and go, it's not quite working for me, I really feel as a valued customer that you can change this, and this, and it will start to work for me better. If you have that personal influence, you're more likely to stay. And that's about the long-term relationship sale. This is about keeping in touch with your customers. It's about exactly what Campbell was going on about, is about you have those opportunities to introduce pay rises, right? And they get lost it gets lost every time. We always back away from, that whole, our prices are going up. Yeah. Happens. We see price rises everywhere. It's part of everyday life, but we back away from that. But I do feel that regret and remorse reduces with the personal influence, because you can go in and go, come on guys, what am I getting extra that's for my money? Please justify this to me. Let's renegotiate the terms. Let's go back on that. But that's an amount of personal influence that I have. If I feel I have no influence and I feel disempowered and I'm not part of that process, then the connection is broken, right?
Yeah, true. Good points. Right. I'm conscious of time, and we did start 5 minutes late, and it is coming up to the hour now. So give me some top tips. If you were to give someone, you're out there, geeky training on how to influence decision making, whether they be steps, stages, I don't know, top tips, what would be some of the factors and things that you would say to someone, think about these things?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, Lisa's going first. Then go, Lisa.
I think it's about set out your table. So, what do I know? What do I don't know? What do I believe? What do I want? What are these? What is that? And I think that whole process that you went through with a decision making is really, really insightful and really, really useful, and allows you to process. So, what's my what's my framework? Set out your stall. And then you can see it and you can share it and you can be really clear and create that business case. So I think it's always about setting out your stall. So I guess that's, and I think when you set out your stall and you communicate that and you get people on board with that journey, those are my top tips.
I like that. Everything on the table, set out your stall. Go on in, Campbell, give me a top tip.
Okay, so always begin with the end in sight. So what's the result you're looking for, whatever that is, and let's call that R. I love a good, an engineer's head, love a good formula. And I look at T plus F plus A, and that's my formula. I will
Hang on a minute, I need a whiteboard.
Oh, I've got one.
Go on.
Let me, I don't know.
I love this.
No, don't do that. No.
Oh, no, right. So
T plus F.
That's for me, but for the decision maker, I do a little bit of algebra. I'll move the letters around, and then it's F plus T plus A equals my result.
We need to know what they are.
Yeah, what are they?
The T stands for thought.
Okay.
So I come at it, and from a sales perspective, you're at Sales 101. You want to know what you're doing, and you want to think about what it is that you're either undertaking for a big deal or even just a catch up or whatever it is. Have that thought process. And then from that thought process, we need to attach plus F, which is the feeling. And if we get those two plus an action, we will then get a result. Now, when I'm leading the process, I will start with the thinking, because I want to look at it from an analytic perspective. What am I doing? What am I controlling? What's the outcome? But when I then look at it from a decision maker's perspective, I will lead with, and the main multiplier is the feeling. So what's the feeling plus the thought and the action that then equals a result? So it takes it and distills it all down into, you gotta engage those different parts of the brain. You've got to look at the emotions, but look at it logically from your perspective, engage the feelings of the customer's perspective. But then you've got to give them something to think about. Got to have substance.
Something to think about. I like it.
That makes the action, and then the action gives you the result. So whatever your R is, that's how you move R. You've got to have your F, your T, and your A. And depending on what you're doing, you may act first and then think about it later, but that then comes at its own risk. So you got to think about that as well. So
amazing. Right, I'm not going to go. I was going to come up with more process, but I'm not now, because I'm like, yikes, I can't top that. So I'm going to give you one thing to think about, and that is give everybody a curveball. We as humans like alternatives. So when you come to try and give them an opportunity to make a decision, never make it the one thing, or if you can, at least, never make it the one thing. It's yes or no. It's Mr. Customer. It's A, it's B, or got a curveball for you. And we as humans, we love a curveball. So anyway, there's some top tips, there's some ideas, there's some topics, there's some stuff, there's some psychology, there's some science in there, there's some algorithms, there's an equation. I think there's a black hole somewhere. There's all sorts of things going in that one. Hopefully you can pick the bones out of that, and some of that will have been useful to you. And I hope you enjoyed that. And I really want to say thank you very much for Campbell and Lisa, and apologize for my errors of hitting buttons. I am going to hit the end one now, and hopefully that all works. But do join us again. We've got a couple coming up. I'm not going to press the slides. Oh, do you know what? I'm going to try and press the slides.
Oh, easy, Tiger.
Here we go. Hey, there we go. If you want to reach out and speak to anyone, there is our details. There's mine at the top. Then you got Campbell. Then you got Lisa. And on, what does it say? There we go. September the 29th, we've got It Means to Be a Geeky Franchisee. So if you want to come and open a business here, start your own world, be a bit like Lisa, a bit like Campbell, and be awesome in your own world, then come do that. Come talk to us. And then we have a really great fun one, which is the power of storytelling in sales, which is always good fun. Lots of people enjoy that. It's how we tell stories in sales, stories that get people's imaginations going, get people thinking about outcomes and all that sort of futuristic stuff. Really good fun. Come join us for that. So that's been it for us for today. Thank you very much for coming along and joining. Apologies for all the ham-fistedness of me pressing buttons here. I'm going to end the live stream now. So if I could ask Campbell and Lisa just stay on till the end so that we just get feedback, and then I will see you all on the next one. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to see you all. Bye-bye, Campbell. Bye-bye, Lisa.